Hello there, Murray Carter again with another question and answer. This is session number 7. We're going to do answer some questions about knife making today. And by the way, it dawned on me when I watched my own videos that I often glance this direction when I'm giving you guys answers. My whole knife case of knives is here, and sometimes looking at the knives that I've created and the other guys here have created helps me answer some of your questions. So that's why I've been taking glances here. Okay, question number 1, how long does a neck knife last? Now, I think this neck knife that I'm using right now is probably something like my 10th or 12th personal neck knife. This one here was actually made by one of our apprentices. I've been doing some R&D on it, cuts like a dream, amazing knife, great edge retention, and so on. Now, when people come to the shop and I say, here, let me show you how I'm going to sharpen a knife, I'll often take the knife that I've got with me and I'll literally knock the edge off and then go ahead and sharpen it just so I can use it for a demonstration. And then I use my personal neck knives really, really hard, digging around the dirt, prying things off, and, really more abuse than any one person should heap upon a personal neck knife. And so my neck knives get sharpened down fairly aggressively. I have reduced the overall size of one of my neck knives by 1/3 in as short as a year. But really, for the average customer, that represents about 10 or 15 years of legitimate use in sharpening. So I expect really any one of my neck knives to last our customers their full lifetime. But here's an offer that I put out years ago when I was just getting started in the industry, and I was very proud of my neck knives. I told my customers that if they bring back a neck knife to me that has been sharpened away to the point where it's not useful anymore, and they've got hundreds of stories that they can share with me and so on, I'm going to give them an amazing deal on a replacement, like 50% off on their next one, because that's just inspiring to think that somebody is going to use their neck knife that much in such a short amount of time. So they should last a lifetime with normal, regular use and normal sharpening. So long as you're, even if you sharpen aggressively, they should still last a very, very long time. That being said, let's talk about that. Some people look at the price of one of my knives. Let's say it's a Damascus neck knife and the price is $695, and they say, oh wow, this will last for 3 generations, because it's so expensive, it'll be an heirloom. Well, yeah, if it's never used it would be, but that doesn't make me happy, and it doesn't suit the customer's purpose either. I want the knives to be used, and if a knife is being used, it needs to be sharpened. If it's sharpened, it's going to wear away. So actually the real value in a knife is the fact that it gets sharpened and constantly used. Take in consideration some of the top sushi chefs in the world. They'll buy a $3,000-$4,000 sushi knife, and within 10 years, excuse me, they'll have it sharpened away to nothing, and then they'll go and buy gladly another $4,000 replacement. So did they get their money's worth out of their knife if they sharpened it away in 10 years of constant use? Well, they sure would say that they did, and then by the fact that they buy another one validates that. So, the life cycle of a blade is that the steel manufacturers, they pull the iron ore out of the earth and they smelt it down into steel. The bladesmiths carefully and lovingly forge that steel into a knife. It's delivered to the customer, and then the customer, through legitimate use, sharpens as a knife and returns it back to the earth, as it were, through time. And that's kind of the life cycle of a knife, and it's not to be avoided. Let's keep in mind that the knives that last through antiquity, the knives that are in museums and so on, are usually the ones that never got used because there was something fundamentally wrong with them. Too heavy, too thick, didn't hold a very good edge. Bad ergonomic design. They never get used, and they're the ones that you'll find in a museum. In fact, in Japan, they say it's impossible to find a top quality secondhand chisel or plane blade because the carpenters use them all up and they never make them to the secondhand market. Okay, that brings us to the next question. Do you make woodworking chisels and plane blades? Didn't know that was the next question on there. I have. I've made all sorts of different things. I've made machetes, I've made straight razors, I've made plane blades, and I've made chisels. And what I've learned by making all those things is that unless you're going to dedicate your whole life and make thousands and thousands of them, you really can't learn all the little idiosyncrasies and nuances that would make you a master over that discipline. So, early on in my career, I realized I was very good at making kitchen knives and very good at making these limited, smaller outdoor knives, neck knives, FS1 knives, white crane knives, and so on. And I focused all my attention on those, and that's why I got good at it. And if I wanted to now make straight razors or whatever, I would literally have to dig in deep and understand that I need to make at least 1,000 of them before I'd really get very good at it. I don't have that time, I don't have that interest, and my customer base doesn't demonstrate a desire for that. So I'll keep doing what I do best, which is make kitchen knives and neck knives. Your thoughts on skeletonized knife handles. We do put holes in the tangs of our blades that have a full handle like this, and that's not really to lighten up the steel, but it's more so that epoxy can go from one side to the other side. I call it epoxy bridges. That's what we call those holes, epoxy bridge holes. You can do a skeletonized knife handle, which means no wooden handle or anything, or no rope, just the metal tang itself with some holes in it to lighten it up. The problem with this steel that we use, the laminated steel with the stainless on the outside and the carbon on the inside, is if you start drilling holes and then leave those holes open to the elements, you're likely to get oxidization or rust inside those holes. Secondly, any skeletonized knife handle, if you're in a really super warm climate and you're looking for a really compact package that won't print through clothing, it makes sense. But if you're in even a semi-cold environment, even if your blade is stainless steel, it's going to be so uncomfortable to hold. You grab onto like cold steel in your hand. There's a reason why handles throughout antiquity have been made of wood. Is because wood is warm, it's soft to the touch, it's kind of organic, and it's a beautiful interface between the muscles and power and control from your arm through your wrist to your hand and into the knife and down all the way through to the primary edge. And the wood is a great interface for that. And just raw, cold metal is not very user-friendly. Okay, when you're at the house of friends or family, do you find yourself offering to sharpen any of their kitchen knives or pocket knives? Or do you not bother because as soon as you get the blade sharp, they're going to dull them again within minutes? Well, I do sharpen friends and families' knives, outdoor knives, pocket knives, and so on. I usually actually prefer to bring them back to my shop where I can really regrind those secondary edges and polish them up efficiently. Doing that with stones at a friend's house usually isn't the greatest use of time, and besides, it's not very social either. So one of the best ways to help them appreciate a sharpened edge is to continue getting sharp knives in their hands and let them put two and two together, because they'll appreciate when the blade's cutting really well, and then they'll start to realize that when it gets dull, it's not very good for anything, and then they'll appreciate you sharpening their knife again, and eventually there's a slow transformation there that takes place in their mindset, and then they start to really value sharp knives, and then they'll take better care of their knives when they're sharp. Okay, last question. What are your thoughts on wah handle designs as compared to Western sculpted handles? So here, this is what he's referring to here. This is one of the knives that I made that I just grabbed out of my knife case here, and it's got a wah handle design, which is basically just a cylindrical shaped handle, and it has no real design features, although many of the ones we make are kind of octagonal, but it's only a variation on oval shaped handles that's all too common in Japan. Now the beauty about these handles is it gives you something to hold on to, and you can hold it in many different ways without being locked into any one grip or any distance. Once a handle becomes very designed with all sorts of curves and shapes and bumps into it, it tends to lock your hand into one position, which can limit a little bit of flexibility. Now the neck knives we can hold in a few different ways, and we like these grooves in the neck knives because it gives us really a secure use out in the field where it could be a matter of life and death if your hand slips up on your blade or if your knife gets pulled out of your hand. In the kitchen you typically don't have those kind of concerns, so a more modest handle design is perfectly warranted in the kitchen, and besides, we want that flexibility to hold that blade in many different configurations. So everything's been thought out, everything's done with a purpose. Sometimes things are done just because we want to be whimsical, but nothing's ever happenstance. Everything in the bladesmith shop should happen by design and be priorly thought out for a reason. Anyway, Murray Carter with Carter Cutlery, and stay tuned for question and answer part 8.